Luna here, and this week we have an Oblivion challenge suggested by PeckishTooth6515. Can you beat Oblivion with only quest rewards? I'm limiting us to direct quest rewards, as in when we finish the quest, we're given, told to pick up, or keep something we found as a reward. This eliminates what the wiki calls indirect quest rewards, mostly unique loot found during quests. In my opinion, those are loot, not rewards. With that, let's get into the rules. We can only equip, consume, use, or sell direct quest rewards. Our fists, starting spells, starting powers, Doomstones, Sigil Stones, Blood Fountains, Magicka Fountains, and Wayshrines are not quest rewards. We can only use non-reward items if they're required to advance or start a quest. Items and spells NPCs give us during quests, such as Buoyancy, are not rewards and can only be used if they are required for the quest. Gold obtained from completing quests and selling quest rewards can be used for recharging and repairing gear and training skills, but not for buying consumables, spells, or equipment. No cheats, exploits, or gameplay mods. Official DLC is allowed. Before we start, we're going to take a moment to discuss Umbra. A couple of comments have rightly pointed out that we can get a sword called Umbra as early as level 1 without starting the associated quest. The quest is normally available at level 20 or higher, so bypassing it gets us a powerful weapon early, and lets us give Martin a Daedric artifact at level 1, which is otherwise impossible. However, I will not get Umbra early unless a run requires it, because it's annoying to do. We can try to lure Umbra to the guards in the Imperial City, but they often arrest us instead of the crazy lady shouting about feeding souls to her sword, because they somehow know we attacked first to get her to chase us.
Stop!
Getting Umbra to the Imperial City without dying or losing track of her because she chased after a mud crab is difficult, and out of the 4 times I got her there, the guards only attacked her instead of us once. A more reliable method involves jumping up on a pillar and letting a poison trap do the work, but we'd need to grind or fortify acrobatics. Speed and health fortifications also help because Umbra hits like a truck. If I started all runs by doing this trick, it'd be boring, and I'd hate doing Oblivion runs. Not in the fun, pain, and suffering way. I'd get burnout. I don't think anyone wants that. Now back to the run. We're prioritizing strength and endurance because we're going to use melee weapons. There are a few reward spells, so intelligence and willpower are useful too. Personality continues to be useless. Agility is nearly useless because while there are reward bows, there are no reward arrows, and speed is nice but not essential. Putting all of that together, a male Nord, a male Redguard, or a female Orc would be best. Redguards and Nords have better strength and speed, but we go with the Orc for better intelligence and willpower and 25% magic resistance. We pick the Warrior Birth Sign to increase our strength and endurance by 10 points, and specialize in combat to increase our blade and block skills faster. Endurance and luck are our favorite attributes. I nearly picked strength, but luck provides a hidden bonus to all skills below 100. In a normal playthrough, luck can become worthless once all skills are mastered, but we rarely master skills in these runs. For our major skills, we'll be using Blade to train strength and get most of our levels, but we can also use Blunt for that, or train hand to hand if we need more strength skill increases without leveling. For endurance, we only pick Armorer. We can train it for levels if we need to, or we can train Heavy Armor or grind Block to get endurance without leveling. We also pick Conjuration, Destruction, and Illusion because the reward spells fall under those schools, and we need to have enough skill to cast them. Finally, we picked Light Armor because why not? We need a way to deal damage, so we go to the Anvil docks and speak to Varule.
The crystal ball is in a chest in the ship's hold, but I can't get to it. I made it as far as the captain's cabin, but the spirits nearly killed me. Get the crystal ball and return it to me here, and I'll make it worth your trouble. Here, you'll need this key. Thank you so much.
We don't need to take out the wraiths, we only need to get the crystal ball. Granted, that's more difficult than you'd think because of the tight quarters inside the ship. The wraiths follow us outside and nearly take out Variole, but she runs away, and once we enter the city, the wraiths return to the ship, allowing us to give Variole the crystal ball. She gives us the captain's cutlass, Red Wave, as a reward. Despite being a leveled weapon, all versions of Red Wave are identical, so it doesn't matter that we got it at level 1. It's not an amazing weapon, but it's damage. Before anyone asks why we didn't complete the main quest at level 2 with this weapon, would that really be fun for anybody? I want to complete a ton of quests because I think it's more fun. We want to join the Dark Brotherhood, and this old lady at Apple Watch is going to kindly aid us in that endeavor. Now for Rufio.
You must now go to the city of Hall, to the abandoned house near the eastern wall. Enter the basement and attempt to open the black door.
Then we found out we can't proceed with the Dark Brotherhood quests because we have to pick a lock to get inside the abandoned house concealing the Dark Brotherhood sanctuary. There's a way for us to pick locks within the rules, but not until we're level 10. We head to Coral to complete the Mages Guild recommendation.
Be rid of her. I do not want her here, spreading her lies.
Excellent. It's a simple task, really. All you need to do is fetch a book for me.
Are we clear? Ignore her request. Go to this place she has described and return with the book. This is far more important than any petty squabble.
We need to return the book to Tychius, and we do so in a specific way to avoid having to pick the lock to Tychius' room to get the book back for Arana. We wait outside Tychius' room in 1-hour increments, so we're right outside the room when he leaves. We hand him the book and he puts it in the chest by his bed, allowing us to grab it and return to Arana to learn how to obtain the Fingers of the Mountain spell.
What? You gave him the book? What were you... Any progress yet? You don't... I believe I've made myself more than clear. Good day. Back again.
Getting the spell requires us to have a Welkin Stone and to use a shock spell on the pillar in the location we found the book in, Cloud Top. We're allowed to use items and spells if they're needed for quests, so we grab a Welkin Stone and use Shocking Touch on the pillar. Above level 5, it's trash because it costs way more Magicka than the same custom spell. But below level 5, it's okay and it lets us grind destruction. The Anvil, Skingrad, Leowin, and Breville recommendations went off without a hitch, although we did have to spend some gold during the Breville one because we couldn't pick a lock to steal the Mage's Staff. The only reward from those quests is the Captivate spell, which allows us to boost an NPC's disposition by 10. It helps us pass disposition checks that would otherwise require bribes, and our gold is much more limited than usual because we're only using gold we get from quests, so that's actually useful. The Bruma and Shadenhall recommendations require lockpicking, so they'll have to wait. We head to the arena to earn gold for repairs and hand-to-hand training. You could argue that the arena raiments are valid for this run, but I disagree because we only have to talk to the Blade Master to get one. It feels more like a uniform. We'll wear one during the arena matches to avoid disqualification, but we cannot wear them outside of the arena. It allows us to grind armor skills, but we have no healing during combat, so there's a limit to how long we can draw the matches out. Next, we set out to repair the Imperial Orrery. This is the first time I've bothered with this DLC, and it's barely better than horse armor. We eliminate 5 bandit camps to gather Dwemer machinery, and take it to Bothiel at the Arcane University lobby. She rewards us by allowing us to use the orrery to gain a greater power. We take Secunda's Opportunity, which fortifies our luck and drains our personality by 20. We're actually interested in the downside of this power, because it will allow us to do Namira's quest later without having to use cheap wine to lower our personality. We buy glow dust from the main ingredient to offer to Azura.
Thank you.
Her quest requires us to deal with vampires that can spread porphyric hemophilia. This disease, left untreated, will turn us into a vampire. We do not want that. We can't cure it or any other diseases without breaking the rules, unless we go through the vampirism cure quest, which I really don't want to do. So we need to avoid getting hit by vampires and other diseased creatures. The weaker vampires went down in one sneak attack, but the 2 orc vampires were another story. We led them outside and took them out from a distance with Finger of the Mountain. This is also when I realized we can't restore attributes, and enemies like goblins, grummites, and necromancers use poisons that damage attributes. Great. I think I found the one run where I should have picked Argonian for the poison and disease immunity. There's no rule against save scumming, but it is frustrating to have to reload every time you're hit with a poison or get a disease. We're also working on Fighters Guild quests for some rewards later in the quest line. During Emelian's debt, we got an unexpected reward, Brusef Emelian's armor, sword, and shield. To get them, you need to go into the Emelian tomb and take them for Bien Emelian, and then offer to pay off her debt for 1,000 gold instead of giving her the armor and sword. The sword is a bit better than Red Wave, but I'll be keeping both weapons in case we run into durability issues. We detour to the arena again and become a champion despite Porkchop's repeated attempts to gore us instead of the enemies. This is going to be all we get from the arena unless we beat the Great Prince, so we travel to Crowhaven.
My mother died recently. Before she passed, she gave me this key and told me it would unlock the truth at the place of my birth, Crowhaven.
After opening the door the Great Prince's key unlocks, we're attacked by the Great Prince's father, Lord Leviticus, a blood-starved vampire. Despite Leviticus clearly being a vampire, I have never gotten vampirism from him on any of my playthroughs, so we can fight him normally. We take Leviticus's journal and return to the Great Prince. He's so ashamed that he throws the Grand Champion fight, allowing us to claim the title in an exceptionally dishonorable manner. We get a Raiment of Valor, and it is valid for the run because it's a reward for completing the arena quest line, not a uniform we're given at the start. We choose the Heavy Raiment, which gives us a way to grind heavy armor for endurance increases. Another viewer requested I try out Meyrud's Razor. I think a Razor-only run would be too short for a full video, but I'll discuss how it could be done and show off the Razor a bit here. You can pick up the enchanted Bazours without damaging anything, and if you have 90 or more strength, you can break the gate blocking the way to the Razor. With strength fortifying effects, you could get the Razor at level 1 without dealing any damage. Or you could do it by failing to break the gate and waking the champion, causing the champion and the wizard to fight. If the wizard won, you could reach the Razor. We get the Razor normally, except for having to save scum the vampire fights to avoid porphyric hemophilia. That was irritating. We don't consume the heart because that would give us 2 nasty diseases. We wake up the champion by failing to move the gate and fight them that way instead. We're allowed to take the Razor because it's the reward for the quest, but we are not allowed to take the Morag Tong armor, Spell Turn Cloak, Blade Turn Hood, or Forge Master's Amulet. The Razor has an instant death effect that has a 2 to 11% chance of working based on our luck. At 20 luck, it's 2%. At 100 luck, it's 6%, and at 200 luck, it's 11%. So with 58 luck, I'm guessing we have a 3 or 4% chance. It hits very quickly, so even a 3% chance can trigger more often than you'd think. We could have gotten a stronger razor at higher levels, but the instant death effect doesn't improve and it requires the razor to be charged. After level 6, the razor goes from having 205 uses per full charge to 95. More damage and durability are nice, but not worth having to recharge the weapon twice as often to get the instant death effect, especially when we have to pay for recharges and our only way of grinding gold are the weekly arena matches. The razor allows us to defeat the gatekeeper without Jared or Relmina's tears, so we can access the Shivering Isles. We get the Blessing of Mania, which allows us to frenzy targets up to level 12 in a 30-foot area for 30 seconds once per day, and make our way to Sheogorath for the Charity of Madness amulet, which grants us a 7% resistance to fire, frost, and shock.
Take this trinket of mine. Perhaps it will serve you well, or look lovely on your corpse. You're going to Zedilian, one of my favorite spots in the Isles. It's a little place I used to take care of unwanted visitors. Now, get going before I change my mind, or my mind changes me.
He wants us to restart Zedilian, and we will, at level 10. For now, we're level grinding. I considered looking for Amber and Madness ore during the grind. The Amber and Madness weapons are tied to the Antipodian Hammer quest, but the quest never ends, so we could get endless gear with enough Amber and Madness ore. They felt borderline, so I decided to err on the side of caution and avoid using them. Also, we got rid of the Emelian armor set. It's heavier than most heavy armor, despite being classified as light armor, so it slows us down a ton and doesn't provide much protection. More importantly, while editing, I noticed the quest marker only points to the Currison's sword, so using the other pieces may have invalidated the run. I'll leave that up to you guys. They haven't helped us much between the low armor rating and the insane weight. The Curris and Blade were definitely quest items, so they're fine, but the Curris wasn't great, so we sold it and dropped the other armor pieces. We're keeping the Blade. We collect Ayleid statues during the grind. We can't obtain the Crown of Ninalata or Lindai because looting them after completing the quest is optional. But we need the gold from selling the statues. We also complete Cleansing the Fane and give the carving to Umbacano, giving us a total of 10,800 gold from his quests. Hand-to-hand training is expensive, and we need 4 or 5 training sessions each level to get our +5 strength increase. I was going to use Blade and Blunt to increase strength so we wouldn't have to train hand-to-hand so much, but no early quests reward us with a blunt weapon. Rock Shatter, the mace associated with When the Vow Breaks, that the wiki lists as a quest reward, isn't given to us at the end of the quest. The quest giver takes it and pays gold as a reward. To be fair, the wiki says that too, in one of the little asterisks at the bottom that I didn't notice during the planning phase. With Madness and Amber weapons off limits, that left Volendrung, the Warhammer Malakath rewards us with. But that quest requires us to be level 10, so by the time we could get Volendrung, we'll be done leveling. If we wanted to level more, it would be necessary, but we're going to skip it and stick with Blades. After we max out Endurance, we shift to increasing Strength and Speed for the last couple levels. We aren't increasing Intelligence because we can't grind any of those skills. Destruction is the only willpower skill we can grind, and because it's a major skill, we can't get 10 levels in it and levels in Blade for the Strength during the same level. There's a way around this, but it only works once. While grinding for our last level up, we watch these two sparring outside of the arena to get a +5 increase in hand-to-hand without training. Then we train Alteration 5 times, increase Blade and Destruction 5 times, and Acrobatics 10 times to get our last level up with +5 to Speed, Strength, and Willpower. Now that we're level 10, we can wrap up some quests that have been on hold and start a lot of new ones. We turn in a flask of a miracle cure to Sickly Bernice in Crucible to get the Circlet of, and I'm going to mispronounce this, the Circlet of Verdure, a ring that gives us 30% disease and poison resistance and fortifies our health and endurance. Next, we visit the Shrine of Nocturnal, who asks us to reclaim the Eye of Nocturnal from some thieves in Leyawiin. Asking a guard about what's been happening in town yields fruitful results, and we find the thieves. They clam up when we ask about the eye, but if we eavesdrop on them, we learn that they stashed the eye in Tidewater Cave. There are some trolls and wolves in the cave that we carve our way through, and once we return the eye, Nocturnal rewards us with the Skeleton Key, an unbreakable quest reward lockpick. We can finally pick locks. This opens up so many quests. Seriously, you don't realize how many quests require you to pick a lock or use an open spell until you don't have access to those. We enter the Dark Brotherhood Sanctuary to get our armor. I consider this armor a quest reward because we had to remove the Apple Watch Granny and Rufio from the census to get it. We pick up the first contract, a watery grave, but we also have unfinished business to settle with the Fighters Guild before we continue with the Dark Brotherhood. I skipped over most of the early Fighters Guild quests because other than the Emelian set and a Dagger of Embers, they only gave us gold. But we're getting to the interesting part of their quest line. We've been holding on to Impgal for ages for this mage in Breville because she rewards us with a leveled Ring of Aegis, which at level 10 is the best version, the Grand Ring of Aegis. That provides an 18% shield, equivalent to 18 points of armor.
We leave as soon as you're ready. I want to investigate Blackheart's stronghold in Arpenia. Meet me at the Leyawiin Guild Hall. We'll go from there. Nothing. I knew it. Azani Blackheart isn't here, alive or dead. The bastards. There was no battle. Azani must have made a deal with the Blackwood Company. My guess is that they paid him off. Blackheart has a fascination with these Ayleid ruins. There's one northeast of here, Atatar. My bet is that he moved his base there. I'll lead.
Modron asks for some time after we take out Blackheart, so we go back to the Dark Brotherhood. We board the Maria Elena via a crate near the ship and sneak up to the captain's cabin. There are only 2 of his crew to avoid, and all we have to do is hide in one of these rooms and let them pass by. Captain Tussaud isn't any great challenge, especially if we wait for him to sleep so we can get an easy sneak attack. Once the deed is done, we escape via the balcony on the ship's stern. We pick up our next contract, Accidents Happen, but while we're in Cheydinhal, let's return to the Mages Guild Hall and open the locked dresser in Falcar's room with the Black Soul Gems to get another recommendation. With that done, we head to Bruma and break into our target's home via the cellar, allowing us to easily avoid their manservant while we make our way to the crawl space on the 2nd floor. Once our target sits in his chair, we loosen the fastenings on the mounted head and it crashes down, fulfilling our contract and netting us a bonus, Sufferthorn, an elven dagger with a damage health enchantment. The strength drain is useless because Bethesda didn't give it a duration. While we're in Bruma, we stop by the Mages Guild Hall and pick the lock on Jeanne's desk, allowing us to pilfer her manual of spellcraft and give it to Volinaro as a prank so he'll dispel the invisibility on Jaskar. I tried intercepting the spell when he casts it on Jaskar around 8 or 9 p.m. each evening, but the effect on Jaskar never wore off, so I don't think the quest can be completed that way. It is a cool way to get 100% Chameleon for a day, though. We'll wrap up the Dark Brotherhood before we continue with the Mages Guild. For our next contract, we need to sneak back into the Imperial Prison to take out Valen Dreth, the Dark Elf who taunted us at the start. In order to get our bonus, we need to complete the contract without removing any guards along the way. It takes a couple of tries, but it isn't that difficult to get past the guards even with middling sneak skill and tunnel cough, a disease that lowers our sneak that we've been stuck with since the Mehrunes Razor quest. We give Valen a taste of his own medicine, gaining the Scales of Pitiless Justice, an item that gives us +2 strength, agility, and intelligence at the cost of -2 personality, as long as it's in our inventory. For our final contract, we have to stage the removal of Francois Motier in front of an enforcer and revive him a day later. After Motier puts on his little show, we flee the city and wait a day, then enter the chapel Undercroft and revive him. His ancestors see the farce as a desecration and attack us, but we defeat them and get Motier to safety, fulfilling our contract and gaining Cruelty's Heart, an amulet that fortifies our strength and willpower by 8 points. According to the wiki, strength over 100 doesn't increase melee damage, so we should have stopped at 90 strength and taken more willpower. Whoops. The next substantial reward in the Dark Brotherhood questline that isn't a bow is getting an enchantment on the Blade of Woe Lucian gave us for retiring Rufio. The enchantment would be decent on every level tier except the one we're on, because it's bugged and what's supposed to be a damage Magicka effect fortifies the enemy's Magicka instead. Wonderful! Also, we'd have to go through the entire quest line to get it, and we're only a quarter of the way through. I love some of the quests, but it's not worth the time. While we're in the Grey Mare, we talk to one of the Germain brothers to start Separated at Birth, the side quest that will lead to getting the Escutcheon of Coral, and talk to Valus Odil to start the Killing Fields quest. We head to Wayne Priory and continue to ignore the Amulet of Kings sitting in our pocket while we talk to the Odil sons. We need to keep both of them alive while we fight off waves of goblins to get the unique weapon we're after. The goblins love to run by us to attack the Odils, and there are skirmishers and berserkers in the mix that can wipe the floor with them. A better way to handle this would have been to do the quest at level 1 when the enemies were easier, and not turn it in until level 10, because in most cases a rewards level is determined at the moment it's handed to us. Not all the time, but a lot of the time. I didn't think of that, so it took a couple of tries to keep both of the Odil sons breathing. Their father rewards us with Chillrend, a decent blade with a frost enchantment. Too bad the weakness to frost effect won't make the sword's frost damage any better. Even the devs didn't understand how the weakness effects work. We head to Shaden Hall to advance the Separated at Birth quest. We completed this mini quest line and a couple of others I'm about to do in the Reflected Damage only run, so I'm only going to cover them briefly. We reunite the twin brothers and meet them in Coral, where they ask us to help them reclaim their family home from ogres. Afterwards, we're approached by Fathazools, who asks us to defeat the ogres in their lair to reclaim the Honor Blade of Coral. Instead of returning the Honor Blade to Ools, we take it to the steward in Castle Coral and receive the Escutcheon of Coral as a reward. The Escutcheon isn't as powerful in this run because we're level 10, but it still reflects 20% of the damage we take and fortifies our endurance by 7 points. We also get 4 filled soul gems from the Germains for completing the quest this way that we can use to recharge our equipment. We pop over to Periite's shrine to reclaim his followers' souls from Oblivion. We're rewarded with Spellbreaker, which isn't leveled and thus has slightly better armor than the level 10 Escutcheon and 30% spell reflection. We also pick up the Ring of Sunfire from the Virtuous Blood quest, which happens to involve a vampire lair. We equip the Circlet of Verdure to increase our disease resistance and ward off porphyric hemophilia, but it doesn't help. We only need to be hit once or twice to get sick, so against vampires with faster melee weapons like daggers, getting into melee range is a one-way ticket to vampirism. One of my characters, an Argonian with disease immunity, got vampirism this way, so I looked it up. Porphyric hemophilia bypasses disease resistance. This isn't considered a bug, it's a feature. So Argonians and Redguards can get vampirism when the vampire in the Dark Brotherhood offers to turn us. Really? They couldn't put a weakness to disease effect on us during that? They had to make one of the best aspects of disease resistance useless instead? It also makes the disease resistance from the Ring of Sunfire, a vampire hunter's ring, useless for avoiding vampirism. They could have given one of the shadier spell merchants a weakness to disease spell so Argonian characters could intentionally get porphyric hemophilia. Or they could have made porphyric hemophilia partially bypassed disease resistance, so the effect was still useful. Although browsing Reddit and Nexus mods, it seems like the disease resistance effect is buggy even against other diseases, vanilla and mod added, so Argonians just can't catch a break, I guess. Time to work on the Mages Guild quests again. Of course, even getting our Mages staff can't be a milk run. We have to fight necromancers that have raided the grove we're getting lumber from. When making our staff, we select the Soul Trap enchantment. When combined with Azura's Star, that will finally allow us to recharge our enchantments without paying through the nobs. The next Mages Guild quest, Ulterior Motives, is easy to complete but requires needless waiting. Seriously, who at Bethesda wanted us to stare at this wait menu? After heading out to the obvious trap, we're met by Glarther? Why do you follow me everywhere? After dealing with that nuisance, we're attacked by the necromancers that were supposed to show up and take them down while trying to avoid hitting the Count as he saves us.
You impossible fool. What possessed you to think I would suggest a meeting here, of all places?
I don't know, Count. For some reason, we couldn't point out the obvious setup before we came here. Once we're back at the Mages Guild, we're promoted to the rank of Evoker and given the Spelldrinker Amulet, which at this level gives us 15 points of spell absorption. Our next task is to check out an Ayleid Ruin excavation with a puzzle pillar that needs to have the right spells cast on it in the right order. After getting the leader of the excavation to stop sulking and hand over the book the translator needs, we translate some inscriptions that tell us what effects to use: Fire, Frost, Damage Magicka, and Fortify Magicka. There's a chest with scrolls that have these effects near the translator, so we don't have to worry about getting new spells. We're granted the rank of Conjurer, and given a set of Conjurer's robes that fortify our intelligence, willpower, conjuration, and destruction by 4. This is one of the few ways we have to increase our overall magicka, so we'll be wearing them unless we really need the sneak bonus from the Dark Brotherhood set. We watch some necromancers create black soul gems, and find an informant for the Mages Guild that got found out. His fate was not a happy one. Then we go back to Skingrad and meet the Count for realsies. This quest, Information for a Price, is buggy, and I didn't find that out until after we broke it. The only way to get the vampire hunters to leave without sending them to meet their ancestors is to take out the vampires in Bloodcrust Cavern before we talk to the hunters and show their leader vampire dust as proof. If we talk to the vampire hunters first, the option to say we took out the vampires disappears forever. And even if we send them to Bloodcrust Cavern and they remove the vampires themselves, they will not leave. I couldn't get them to go to the cavern, so we took out the vampires, which was a painful process because we got porphyric hemophilia easily because disease resistance doesn't work, and I'm not showing it because it was a bunch of reloading whenever we got spotted, and okay. Deep breaths. Then we went back to the hunters and couldn't get the dialogue that tells them the vampires are gone, which is when I looked it up and found out that at this point we have 2 options. 1, reload to before we talk to the hunters and destroy the vampires again to get the hunters to leave. Or 2, remove the hunters. 3,000 gold and some very graphic ideas of what to do to whoever made this quest later, we can move on. We head to the Bruma Mages Guild Hall because Jan has shut up for once, and that has the Archmage worried. When we arrive, the place is on fire and full of spooky, scary skeletons. There are so many that we have to lead them out onto the street so the town guards and some very brave townsfolk can help us deal with them. We find a necromancer ranting about the King of Worms, take her out, and Jaskar appears. We return to the Archmage to inform him of these events, and according to the wiki, this is where we're supposed to get promoted to Wizard and get the spell Wizard's Fury, but instead we're promoted to Warlock and given nothing. I don't know if it was a bug or if the ranks on the wiki are wrong. It might be a bug because the game seems to be imploding before my eyes. There have been no melee sound effects since we entered the Bruma Mages Guild Hall. We can hit things, but there's no weapon impact or any sound when we draw or sheath our weapons. This has persisted through a reload, so I guess melee will be silent for the rest of the run. We continue the Mages Guild questline in the hopes that we'll be promoted to Wizard and retrieve the Bloodworm Helm and the Necromancer's Amulet. The Bloodworm Helm is laughably weak. It fortifies Conjuration by 6 points. Why did the Council Mages bother running off with this? The Necromancer's Amulet is a lot stronger and would be worth betraying the guild over if we were allowed to use it. It drains strength and endurance by 25 points, but it also fortifies intelligence and willpower by 14 points and magicka by 130 points. That would triple our magicka. But it isn't a quest reward, it's an item required for a quest, and we have to give it back to complete the quest. Thankfully, after we give Traven both items, he directs us to Romanus for advancement, and we're promoted to the rank of Wizard, granting us the spell we've been working for, Wizard's Fury, a solid destruction spell that only costs about half as much magicka as the same spell made at the spellmaking altar. There are no further rewards from the Mages Guild quests we can use, so we're going to leave Traven to pick up the pieces of his untrustworthy council and deal with the King of Worms on his own. I'm sure it'll be fine. We have some Fighters Guild quests left, so hopefully Modron feels like talking to us now. Azan's contract, the Stone of Alessa, is uninteresting except for the fact that it rewards us with 3 strong potions of healing. But Grokash's last 2 contracts give us unique rewards. First, we have to rescue Lady Rogbutt from some ogres and return her to her father, Lord Rungdumpf. Thankfully, Lady Rogbutt is smart enough to flee from the ogres and take shelter in a nearby cave, so we're able to fight them without worrying about her safety. When we return to her father, Lord Rungdumpf rewards us with a unique 2-handed sword. It's one of my favorite weapons in the game design-wise, but the enchantment is nearly useless unless we're fighting mages, in which case the silence effect is helpful. It does more damage than almost any other sword we have, but as a 2-hander it has some advantages and disadvantages. It has more reach, which can help against enemies we need to keep at arm's length, like vampires, will-o'-the-wisps, and anyone with a damage attribute, enchantment, or poison. But we also can't use a shield with it, which lowers our armor rating and reduces the effectiveness of blocking. However, we do keep the enchantment of whatever shield we have equipped. Our last contract from Grokash is to solve the mystery at Harlan's Watch. We have to find some townsfolk who have disappeared, and the remaining townsfolk report seeing strange lights in the nearby swamps at night. Great. Sounds like will-o'-the-wisps. Nearly invisible creatures that can destroy our willpower and intelligence. We have to fight them at range or with Rugdump's sword. If they get any closer, we'll take massive attribute damage. Sometimes even at claymore range they manage to get us. This took a ton of tries, and I was just a little enraged. We managed to take out one of the 3 wisps, but the other 2 kind of got confused and stopped chasing us as we retreated up the steep bank, allowing us to enter the cave they'd been sitting in front of. The cave was full of trolls, but they were a cakewalk after dealing with the will-o'-the-wisps. Apparently, the missing townsfolk had more trouble with the trolls because we found their remains in the cave and had to return to Harlan's Watch with the bad news. They took it much better than you'd think and gave us the Mind and Body Rune, which increases strength by 8 and grants 8% damage reflection. This, combined with the Ring of Namira and the Escutcheon of Coral, can give us 40% damage reflection. Grokash and Azan are out of contracts, so we return to Modron.
I'm taking down the Blackwood Company, and I want your help.
Getting the Blackwood Company mage Orin wants to have a completely civilized discussion with is simple, with the exception of the mercenary who happened to have a weapon with a damage willpower enchantment. We had to take them out at range and chuck them over a cliff. Once we had the mage at Orin's home, we proceeded to charm him for the answer to our first question, but we couldn't get his disposition high enough to answer any further questions.
No.
One moment, please. After employing entirely ethical methods of persuasion, we got him to talk more. But he refused to reveal the source of the Blackwood Company's power and resorted to drastic measures to avoid questioning.
I want you to get to Leowen and join the Blackwood Company. Find the secret of their success.
The Blackwood Company easily buys us turning on the Fighters Guild, but they took Maglir, so that tracks. Before we set out on our first assignment, we're ordered to drink a bottle of hist sap. We black out, only to come to in the Water's Edge settlement as it's being overrun by goblins. We fight off the goblins and black out again. When we check on the Water's Edge settlement, it's been decimated. Those weren't goblins we were fighting. The hist sap just made them appear to be goblins. We could have left the settlement without attacking any of the goblins, but the other Blackwood Company members would have taken them out before we could return. There's no way to avoid this. We need to destroy the corrupted hist tree that the Blackwood Company is harvesting the sap from. We return to their headquarters in Leowen, where we're outed as a Fighters Guild spy and attacked. That makes things simple. Most of them aren't difficult to handle, but Rizikar, their leader, has a sword with a disintegrate weapon enchantment. Every time he hits us, whatever weapon we're holding instantly breaks, but Rizikar has issues with stairs that we use to our advantage. We pelt him with Wizard's Fury from a safe distance, and it takes a while because of my terrible aim, but it works. We take the key to the basement from him and enter the room of the hist tree, and the frame rate keels over. We destroy the machinery by jamming 2 loose pipes into the gears. No, not with the grab function, silly, by activating the machinery with the loose pipes in our inventory. The game crashes when we exit, but I saved right before leaving, and when we reloaded, we were able to leave and melee sound effects came back. I love this game, but it's held together with duct tape and hope. Maglir showed up, and instead of begging us to rejoin the Fighters Guild, which would have contracts again with the Blackwood Company out of the way, he attacked us. A real genius, that one.
I want you to take this.
We return to Modron, and he gives us the Helm of Orion, Bearclaw, a heavy helm that fortifies our agility and endurance by 10 points. When we return to Villain Adonton, she chews us out. Then she does a 180 and makes us Master of the Fighters Guild. There should have been more interactions with her before and after she lost her sons, because as is, she comes off as wildly inconsistent, to say the least. We reinstate Modron as our second in command, aka the guy who actually runs the place, so we don't have to.
I'm an old man. I've done my time.
We've done a decent chunk of the side quests in Cyrodiil, but we've only scratched the surface of the Land of the Mad. We make our way to Zidillion and reclaim the focus crystals from the Grummites. Grummites are difficult for us to fight because they use poison often, so the risk of attribute damage is high. That means we have to use sneak attacks and Wizard's Fury to take them out, and requires more reloads than I'd care to admit. Once we've retrieved the 3 focus crystals and attuned the Resonator of Judgment, we're teleported to the viewing area above the Zidillion chambers to choose the fate of 3 adventurers that have wandered into the ruins. Overall, I prefer the Mania options, although I can go either way on the first chamber.
Get back here, you cowards! Something's not right.
All this time to be so close, and yet so far. If only we had the key. Wait, do you hear something? Look, keys. One of them must open the gate. We're rich.
Let's get out of here, Sindelius. This is obviously a trick to waste our time.
I'll know it when I see it. Yes, it must be here.
What? How in Oblivion can I be dead? This is impossible. Nothing killed me. I didn't even get a chance to fight. No chance to defend myself? No chance for battle? Why?
After showing the adventurers a maddening time, the custodian, Kilban, retrieves their belongings and presents them to us as a reward. The most interesting item is Dawnfang, a one-handed blade with a fire enchantment that does more damage than Rugdump's sword. But there's much more to it than that. Every night, Dawnfang will transform into Duskfang, a similar blade with a frost enchantment, and in the morning it will transform back into Dawnfang. If we snuff out a dozen enemies, the next transformation will transform the blade into either Dawnfang Superior or Duskfang Superior, which can absorb health or magicka from our target, respectively. More importantly for this run, the blade repairs and recharges itself each time it transforms. We also get the Talisman of Abatement, which has a life detection and water enchantment. We don't get rewards for helping the Duke and Duchess, so we're going to skip to lighting the Flame of Agnon. We help the Golden Saints take the Altar of Despair from the Dark Seducers after convincing their commander to listen to her lieutenant and attack through the side passage. We carry the flame to New Sheoth and light the fire for Mania, because doing so will grant us the Raiment of Arden Sul, which has stronger intelligence and willpower fortification than our Robes of the Conjurer, and a 13% shield enchantment. Neither side's Ring of Lordship is useful for us at this level, so we're going with Dementia so we can help the Golden Saints at Brellock later.
Dementia? The suspense is killing me! Or you, if I have to keep waiting.
That means we have to take out Syl, the Duchess of Dementia.
A dangerous choice. I like it! She's gotten to be a bit much anyway. Thinks everyone is out to get her. Which they are in this case. So be it.
We convinced two of her courtiers, Kithlan and Anya, that we'd be a better Duchess with a little help from the Captivate spell, and they give us a key to the House of Dementia. We fight through the private gardens and into Syl's quarters only to find an imposter. We follow Kithlan to the secret tunnel and pursue Syl, fighting past several Dark Seducer guards along the way. And when we reach Syl and her last two guards, Syl charges forward before her guards detect us. One of the guards joins the fight, but the second guard stays at her post. I guess she decided she'd rather serve the new regime. I choose to believe she's the one we can summon for 1 minute per day from here on out.
Then go, Theoden. Have your green mode. Take a bath. But leave before I decorate my throne with your insides.
Yes, that's it. I'll go. Away, far away. Working for them is like working for us, but without all the dying.
After Théoden's betrayal, we're sent to the Fringe to hold off the Knights of Order. We find the commander of a group of Dark Seducers, Udica, but her forces have been decimated by the Knights of Order coming from the spire in the center of Passwell. Our only option to stop the Knights is to enter the ruins of Zedfin, while her forces draw the Knights' attention so we can shut down the spire. With Duskfang, the Knights aren't too tough as long as we don't alert too many at once. Once we find the root of the spire, we feed it 3 Hearts of Order we harvested from the Knights, overloading it and shutting it down, but the ruins begin to collapse around us. As usual for Bethesda's games, physics is truly the most powerful enemy, and the falling rubble manages to do what over a dozen Knights of Order could not when we made the mistake of running down the final hallway without playing red light, green light with the collapsing ceiling. We got out on the second try and returned to Udica.
You will seek the assistance of Relmina Vernum in Zalselm to rebuild the Gatekeeper. You remember? The creature you killed to get in here.
Go fetch me blood liqueur, osseous marrow, dermis membrane, and essence of breath. And take this key. It will allow entry into the gardens and give you direct access to my sanctum.
Getting the components we need to rebuild the Gatekeeper involves making our way past the Flesh Atronachs, skinned hounds, skeletons, shambles, and hungers in the Gardens of Flesh and Bone. None of these enemies pose much of a threat, especially since the tunnels are dark enough that we can sneak up on most of them. We pick the Heart of Spell Turning. The other parts don't matter because we can only have one of their powers at a time, and assist Romina in creating the new Gatekeeper. She must have forgiven us for taking out the previous one because she taught us how to summon a Flesh Atronach for 2 minutes once per day.
The desire to conceive.
Apparently, nobody told the captain of the Golden Saints that Thaydon had turned traitor, despite 2 Golden Saints being present when we became Duchess of Dementia and Thaydon betrayed Sheogorath. So they let him into their stronghold, Brellock, and he let the Knights of Order in. As the only remaining noble in the realm, we have to help them repel the Order's assault. We have the aid of a small squad of Golden Saints through the fortress, but they turn to stone when the forces of Order block the wellspring. Thankfully, the Knights of Order aren't known for their perception, and we take out most of the ones in the wellspring chamber with stealth attacks. After we use the chimes to shatter the crystals blocking the wellspring, the Golden Saints are restored, and their captain grants us the ability to summon one of them to our aid for 2 minutes once per day. We're also given a full set of Golden Saint armor. It's unenchanted, but it has 12 more points of armor than the raiment of Arden Sul, though we'd be giving up 7 points of intelligence and willpower. We haven't been using Wizard's Fury as much since we got Dawnfang, so I'd say the armor was worth it, but it's really heavy and slows us down a lot compared to the raiment. If we could enchant the armor, or if we'd mastered heavy armor, which makes heavy armor weightless when worn so it wouldn't slow us down, then I'd switch, but as it is, we're going to stick to the raiment of Arden Sul. You may not like it, but this is what peak performance looks like. We return to Sheogorath only to find out we have run out of time. We could leave at this point because the remaining rewards in the Shivering Isles questline only work within the Shivering Isles or are indirect rewards that are useless for this run. But we're really close to the end of the quest, so consider this a bonus.
The staff is a tool of great vision and thus requires the eye of one who has witnessed one of these unseen secrets firsthand. Sirta resides in the howling halls of Mania. Find her and bring me the eye that is seen that which no other has. The trees and branches of this realm feed from a deep font of madness and mystery. One of the oldest trees, named the Tree of Shades, lies in the halls of Milkar. Milkar is a place of ruin, root, and mania. Go there and bring me a branch of this tree, but be warned. The tree will not surrender its secrets to one who has not earned them.
The battle against our shadow clone to get the branch for the Staff of Sheogorath is tricky. Our clone has all the abilities we have, so they can do things like summon a flesh astronaut. And they also use some of the starting spells that are off limits to us. Thankfully, we don't have any healing options besides the starting spell, Heal Minor Wounds, so neither does our clone. The weapon they drop, Shadow Rend, is a very good weapon with a unique design, but sadly we can't keep it because it's not a quest rule. Getting the eye isn't an issue, and we return to Knife Point Hollow.
Soak the staff in the waters of the land, and it will open its full power to you. You have defied the expected and accomplished something that denies all logic. I must contemplate the error in my calculations.
Take those perfect logical predictions and shove them. To imbue the staff with power, we need to immerse it in the Font of Madness, the spring behind Sheogorath's throne. However, when we return to the palace, all is not well. We have to enter the root dungeon behind the throne and defeat the priests of order that are poisoning the font, or we won't be able to stand against Jiggalag. This consists of finding these nightmarish pods to create more cultivator gnarls to open the barriers that have been sealed by order crystals. There are some gnarls that have been corrupted by order, but the only other enemies are some very squishy priests of order and Thaydon, who is now both coherent and depressed. We take care of them and cleanse the pools of mania and dementia so we can finish the staff. Jiggalag doesn't keep us waiting. The 2 obelisks outside the palace activate, and Knights of Order swarm the grounds. Most of the soldiers aiding us are Dark Seducers, and a few Golden Saints that were patrolling the palace grounds join in too. We handle a few waves of Knights while we overload the 2 obelisks with Hearts of Order. Then Jiggalag himself takes the field, and sends the remaining Dark Seducers and Golden Saints elsewhere. Despite all the hullabaloo over needing the Staff of Sheogorath, we don't use it during our duel with Jiggalag. Maybe it kept us from succumbing to whatever happened to our allies? Regardless, Duskfang defeats him soundly, and breaking the Grey March cycle frees Jiggalag to roam Oblivion again, while we take over being the Mad God. I don't know how this works out lore-wise. Sheogorath is a thing again by the time the dragons return in Skyrim 200 years later. Does our character end up becoming the new Sheogorath and kinda morph into him over time? Or does Jiggalag revert and reclaim his throne? Well, that's an issue to be settled later in either case. We don't get much in the way of rewards other than access to a court healer, who can also restore attributes? I didn't know she could do that. She also cures diseases because the tunnel cough is gone. If I'd known that, I would have rushed for this much faster. We could have saved ourselves so much frustration against vampires and poison users.
I never doubted you for a moment. Now, of course,
allow me to just go beat my head against the wall for a moment for that one. Well, now that we've stopped one Daedric invasion, let's attend to the one we've left on the back burner for nearly 5 in-game months. I'm sure Martin has been fine in the Kvatch ruins. I forgot to hand Joffrey the Amulet of Kings before we went to Kvatch. I think my subconscious was trying to save us from his incompetence, but the game won't let us avoid the Blade's idiocy. We close the Oblivion Gate in Kvatch and talk to Martin, but because the Emperor didn't tell us his son's name and location, instead of sending us to his incompetent bodyguards for that information, our character doesn't know that Martin is the heir. The Emperor had time to tell us, take the amulet, give it to Joffrey, he alone knows where to find my last son. So he had time to say, take the amulet, go to Kvatch and find Martin, my last son. We leave Martin in the civilian encampment outside of the Kvatch ruins and head to Waynon Priory so Joffrey can tell us what we should have already known. For funsies, let's time this. We hand Joffrey the Amulet of Kings just before 10 a.m. on the 15th of Morningstar. We remove our equipment for maximum speed and beeline to Kvatch, grab Martin, and head back to Waynon Priory. Although the return trip takes longer because Martin insists on fighting random wolves and he's slower than us, so we have to let him catch up. We get to Waynon Priory just after 6 p.m. on the same day, and the Mythic Dawn are already attacking. Joffrey couldn't keep the amulet safe for an average person's work shift. Martin, if you didn't want to deal with these idiots, you should have run faster. After obtaining the culty books from the meeting in the sewers, which Boris survives for once, we head to the Mythic Dawn Shrine. We have decent sneak skill, so we're able to sneak around the congregation and take out a guard flanking the altar. The guard is sent to paradise without making a sound, but somehow Mankar, and only Mankar, notices us, cuts off mid-sentence, and without saying a word, he turns around and flees to paradise. The congregation disperses as if everything is fine. We take out Cameron's daughter before the jig is up, and the battle through the caverns goes as it usually does. Gotta feed Duskfang somehow. Martin needs a Daedric artifact, but several items that are definitely Daedric artifacts do not count. Some of the exclusions, like Mehrunes' Razor, make sense. We probably don't want to use an artifact connected to the Daedric prince invading us. It would be nice if Martin said something along those lines, or acknowledged any of the artifacts like Jiggalag's sword or the Staff of Sheogorath, even if he gave some reason why they couldn't be used. But I get why they didn't want to rope Sean Bean in to record those lines. Wonder if that's the reason why these mostly DLC artifacts aren't usable. We talked to Martin with those items in our inventory to double check, and there's no option to show them to him. Currently, we can give him Spellbreaker, the Ring of Namira, the Skeleton Key, or Azura's Star, all of which are arguably useful to us, although we probably could have gotten away with giving him the star. But we can just go ahead and get another artifact. Normally, I would do a Daedric quest we haven't done on the channel yet, but when we did Sheogorath's quest, there was special dialogue because in that run, we had beaten the Gatekeeper, but we had never talked to Sheogorath, and I want to see if there's special dialogue after completing the DLC. The worshippers at the shrine don't respond to us any differently, but when we make an offering to ourselves, we hear Haskell instead of the former Prince of Madness.
Praying to yourself, my lord? That's not a good sign. Or perhaps it is. Prince of Madness and all that. While I believe you should be attending to your duties, it is, of course, your prerogative to spend time wherever you wish. Your predecessor did have one task he wanted performed, though he never found a mortal suited for the task. There is a settlement called Border Watch that your predecessor found rather dull. This, of course, offended him greatly. They are a rather superstitious group, living their lives based on omens and prophecy. One such prophecy, the Kashara, was of particular interest.
The quest plays out the same way. We lure in rats with exceptionally smelly cheese and poison some sheep, and then Haskell contacts us.
Ah, very good, sire. Your predecessor left everything in place for the final sign. You'll want to head to the center of town. Good day. Well done, my lord. You should have this, as it is one of your artifacts. I don't know why I didn't think to give it to you sooner.
We get Captain Bird through the Oblivion Gate with no issues. We even got the 2 guardsmen with him through the ordeal. That's the first time they've survived on the channel. I'm chalking that up to Duskfang. This blade chews through Daedra, especially when it's in the form with frost damage. Next, we need to get the Armor of Tiber Septum from Sancretor, and this time we'll return it before we get the Great Welkin Stone because I'd like Martin to have his armor during the Battle for Bruma. Dawnfang is better than Duskfang in Sancretor because all of the enemies are very resistant or even immune to frost damage. However, both weapons can bypass the ghost's physical damage immunity, so either one can work. The undead blades go down a bit faster, but even with Dawnfang, they feel overly tanky compared to the tiny amount of damage they deal to us. And once the enchantment runs out of juice or the weapon shifts to Duskfang, it feels like we're chopping down trees. Getting the Great Welkin Stone is no issue. Even in its Duskfang form, our blade does enough damage to the Lich to take it down in seconds. If you were bored because we haven't been struggling, the next part should hold your attention. The Battle for Bruma. At this level, we're up against Flame Atronachs, Dremora, and fully grown Clanfears. If I had waited until nightfall so we had Duskfang, I could have made things easier, but our main issue was our lack of healing. That hasn't changed during this whole run. We have to wait to heal, and we cannot wait during this battle. Warping back to the court healer only works in the Shivering Isles, so that's not an option here. If we dive into the melee, we don't have enough health left to survive getting the Great Sigil Stone. We tried summoning a Flesh Atronach, and the soldiers turned on it right away. Okay, understandable to be honest, let's try a Golden Saint. They turned on her too, and on top of that, they turned on us after they took her out. Beautiful. So summoning is not an option, and melee is dangerous too. We tried to hit an enemy at the edge of the cluster of Fail, only for one of the idiots supposedly on our side to run into the blade. We dealt the finishing blow, so everyone screamed murder, even though we were in the middle of a pitched battle, and attacked us again. They even do this to each other. NPCs' melee hits phase through everything except their intended target, but their arrows sure don't. Look at Boris, he's a pincushion after the first wave. And you guessed it, if one of the archers takes an ally off the census, everybody shouts murder and may have started infighting. That was difficult to confirm in the chaos. The archers could shoot us too, and Martin's Frost AoE spell was a menace to everyone except the Daedra. In most runs, our focus is usually on picking off stragglers or healing Martin during this fight, but this time we stood back and only engaged the enemies that attacked us. Towards the end, we had to help Martin because most of our side had already gone to meet their ancestors and he was surrounded. I thought we were going to lose him, but the Great Gate opened and Martin held out long enough for us to enter it. With no healing, darting over the lava isn't an option, so we have to go the normal way, which I admit took me a while to figure out. First, we go through the door on the left, dodging around the Clanfears. The Clanfears hit like a truck and they can outrun us, but they can't open doors. We run up the tower and take the exit that has us running alongside the siege engine, which takes us to another tower that has a door near the bottom that lets us out on a broken bridge. We have enough acrobatics and speed to clear the gap and make it to the gates blocking the way to the Sigil Stone Tower, but we're on the other side. We usually approach the right side, and this time we're on the left, so there's nowhere to jump around the gate blocking our way. Or if there is, I didn't see it and didn't have time to look for it with all the enemies on our tail. We enter another tower with the gate controls and open the gate, jumping around a flame Atronach and some Dremora pursuing us on the way down. We're dangerously low on health from stray hits, so we break out the 3 strong potions of healing. That's when I noticed the 3 weak potions of healing we're carrying. We haven't bought or picked up any potions, so they must have been a quest reward, but I can't for the life of me remember which quest or find any mention of them on the wiki or in our quest journal, so we don't use them. The strong potions of healing that we got from the Stone of St. Alestia quest for the Fighters Guild are just enough to get us through the Sigil Stone Tower as we play tag with the enemies while we're waiting for the Great Sigil Stone to warp us out. Once we're outside, Martin nearly finishes us off with one of his Frost AoE spells, so we hide until the stragglers are dealt with. Other than Martin, there's a lone militia member left who seems oddly happy considering the circumstances. Once we're back at Cloud Ruler Temple, we drop the suspect weak potions of healing, along with other non-quest reward items we've been carrying around, like the Sword of Jiggelag we brought with us to see if Martin had any lines about it. Most of the rest of the stuff was alchemy ingredients that we were carrying in case we needed them for a quest, because several of the Daedric and Fighters Guild quests required them, like Glow Dust, Feldew, Imp Gall, and Troll Fat. There were also a few alchemy ingredients I picked out of habit, but we never used them. With those purged from our inventory, it's time to head to Paradise. Paradise is a bit dicey due to our lack of healing. The Clanfears and Frost Astronauts can be nasty, especially if there's more than one. The Dremora we have to fight to obtain the Bands of the Chosen is barely worth mentioning, but the bands themselves cause us problems. The Golden Saint armor, Dark Brotherhood armor, Raiment of Valor, and Raiment of Arden Sul all cover the torso, legs, hands, and feet, so wearing the bands forces us to unequip them. Why is this run so against us wearing clothes? This makes getting through the caverns more of a challenge, but most of the enemies are Ascended Immortals or Scamps with only a few Clanfears and Flame Atronachs thrown in. We can't wait and heal because the enemies are too close, but we make it through the caverns with a bit of help from a turncoat cultist. Ironically, the battle with Mankar and his children is far easier than getting through Paradise was. We can re-equip our Raiment of Ardent Soul because our ally removed the Bands of the Chosen, and we switch to the Spelldrinker Amulet, Spellbreaker, and the Ring of Sunfire, granting us 15 spell absorption and over 50 spell reflection, and we have our innate 25% magic resistance if those fail. We use our Heart of Spell Turning power from rebuilding the Gatekeeper at the start of the fight, so for 30 seconds we have over 80% spell reflection, and summon our Flesh Atronach to cause chaos. Between it and our ally, Mankar's children stay out of the way, and we get a bit lucky when Mankar staggers from a hit from Duskfang. He tries to run away, but he can't quite make it out of our reach before we bring him down. The Heart of Spell Turning is still active, so that lasted less than 30 seconds. The game doesn't seem to know what to do with that, because Paradise fails to collapse, and after a few moments we're warped out even though the place is mostly intact. Now we need to get Martin to the Temple of the One. We fight through the palace and Green Emperor Way, but once we reach the Temple District, we run for the temple so Martin will follow us. It's a good thing that works, because I don't think we had enough health to survive outside the temple for long. With that, Martin becomes a dragon, I forget to adjust the camera because I was working on the last part of this script, and we prove that you can beat Oblivion with only quest rewards. The key to this run was Redway. The only other damage sources I can think of that we could have obtained without doing damage are the Finger of the Mountain spell and Mehrunes Razor. If the brothers in the Killing Fields defeated the goblins on their own by some miracle, we could have gotten Chillwind, but that sounds awful. The Shivering Isles DLC, specifically Dawnfang and to a lesser extent the Court Healer, blew this challenge apart. Dawnfang is good to begin with, but the fact it repairs and recharges itself really hurt. If I redid the run, I wouldn't bother with the Mage's Guild other than the Breville recommendation for Captivate. The Mage's Staff was redundant once we got Dawnfang because it could recharge itself, and the Raiment of Ardent Soul was better than Conjurer's Robes. Wizard's Fury was nice, but it wasn't worth going through that many extra quests that involved so much waiting and so many vampires.
The amulet is shattered.
Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing and leaving a like. It really helps the channel. Feel free to suggest challenge runs for this or any other game in the comments section. I'm always looking for more ideas. See you guys next time.